Hello, Broderick Wallace here. I hope you are doing well. Just sitting here in the dark as usual, having a cup of tea. Right, what do I want to talk about? I want to talk about specifically. This is a music focus in a way. So, if you're not into heavy metal, don't worry. This will get spiritual. You know, it's bound to, isn't it? It's why I'm doing it. It's why, whatever. Get on with it. Get on. I can feel the echoes. Exodus by Samael, and this is the EP, which comes out. Well, let's get to the main album. The main album is Passage. This was a really big influence on me for my Jekazol project because this album features a drum machine, programming, and some keyboards as well. And it's all mixed together in this very, very, very modern and future-looking album. But it still retains its black metal essence. There's elements of thrash, there's elements of all kinds of stuff, even elements of I don't know if you call it dance music, but electronic music. So it's excellent. Basically, you should definitely check this album out. Came out in 1996. After that, we have the classical version of the album, so Zytraz, later known as simply Z, or Ztraz, known now as Z. He performs the entire album on piano. So it's quite a beautiful album to perform ritual to, actually. A recommendation there from my good self to you. So 1996, 1997, I'm going on the internet dates here, but I'm quite sure this is right. And 1998, we get the EP, which gets, it's the mainstream, what they usually do, you know, the metal. So we had the venture out into the classical piano, but we're back to the metal again. And the title track of this EP, Exodus, is the song that I want to focus on. And like with a lot of bands over the years, you don't love everything that they do. I will say, actually, even though it's not featured in this particular picture, they changed their logo style to be very similar, almost identical to the logo of my music project, Jekazol, after I did it and after I began posting on their forums. So I think I might have influenced this band. Either that or it's such an amazing coincidence, it's unreal. So I know which one I'm going for, and I'm pleased about that. So if you ever see my Jekazol logo, nope, I didn't rip them off. I did it first in 2005. They did it in, I think it was 2008 that it first appeared for them. So anyway, another claim to fame. So Exodus says here, blah, 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 1998, Century Media release. Doing a bit of advertising here for you. Yeah, all that stuff. So let's get to the meat. And sorry, I'm going to have to bring in Jordan Peterson again because I do love the guy, and he's a very important intellectual in this day and age that has a lot to say when it comes to solving the problem of modernity, specifically in the West. So this definitely relates to this channel. And again, it's like the music. You don't have to love everything that they do. I don't have to love everything that the guy says. I'm obviously not so Christian heavy. I'm coming from the pagan perspective, much more so. But, and this brings me on to an important tangent, that being principally, you might say, perennialist, universalist, and understanding that much of the pagan knowledge has been destroyed or transmuted through the Abrahamic stream. We can't dissect things anymore. We can't have purity, and we shouldn't get hung up on this too much. Flavors are one thing. I'm definitely a both and kind of guy. It's like I want to feel I want to access the pagan modality, but I understand the universalism that's behind everything. I understand the perennialism that the tradition is carried by. But I also understand that, especially when it comes to politics and war. So, for instance, this country where I live, the UK, or England, it gets complicated. The United Kingdom, England. Oh God, try and untangle that one. Anyway, here where I am in Blighty, it's been a Christian country for a very, very long time. So an amalgamation has taken place, like it has in other parts of the world. And as we move forward into modern times, this amalgamation becomes more profound, and we are able to understand it's like a jigsaw piece. So you try to if you're trying to reconstruct paganism, so you start off with a jigsaw piece and you're putting these pieces in, and then there's missing spots, lacunae, a very posh word for this. So we want to fill in these lacunae, but because of war and politics and time, we simply don't have them. We can make guesses for certain spaces, but for others, when we look at, say, for instance, Christianity, or we look at Buddhism, or pagan Shintoism, or you could say the for me, recently looking at the Yamabushi, there's things that inspire me, and I can see parallels. It's like, this idea of being in nature with a staff in your hand and a particular way of dress, accessing the spirit of the land, and partaking in a balancing process internally within the external arena of the wilderness. I see a parallel immediately, and I'm inspired, and it teaches me and it enables me to fill in certain gaps in my thinking, and this is the way we do things, and this is the way it has to be. So I say, let's be very conservative about tradition, whilst at the same time moving forward, and let's have this wonderful tapestry of everything woven together. We don't have to do one or the other in extremes. We can do both and is cool. That's why I use the term Celto-Egyptian, although really you'd have to say, well, Celto, Anglo, Egyptian, and then when you're, especially when you're with the Hermetic thing, there's a lot of Easterns. I'll just use it as a placeholder for the idea that there is, definitely a fusion going on. But it is universal, it is perennial. Okay, rant over. Let's get to the quote by JP, which is paraphrased by me. I just happened to hear him say this in an interview that I listened to today, and that is, when you escape tyranny, you enter the desert. Let's check I'm still recording. Yes. Oh, we've captured the waffle. Excellent. Right. So, let's look at the word tyranny. So we're talking about civilization, and we're talking about the tyrannical structure. And in his case, you could say the misinterpretation of the tyrannical structure, especially with this attack on patriarchy, which is, it's a bit weird, isn't it? I mean, anyway. So it's a way of saying, if you want to do without that structure that has come into place through many, many years of it not only being to a certain extent streamlined, but also corrupted, but it's there. It's what we have. If you want to throw all of that out the window, if you want to start again, then you enter the desert. And this brings me to the song Exodus. So we go to the Bible, we think about the Jewish Exodus, escaping the tyranny of Egypt. Even this is kind of very, very liberal in its mythological metaphor. But it is really interesting how there's a lot in Jewish occultism that is very Egyptian. And if you actually look at the hieroglyphs, the work that's been done, there is a similarity in the language. And also, if you read, oh God, off the top of my head, I'm trying to think what it's called. Timaeus, the section on Egypt, that is also very revealing, especially certain notions like circumcision, etc. It's definitely a strong parallel going on. Anyway, the tyranny, the structure, the pharaoh at the top of the triangle, etc. If you want to just throw all of this out, then you're starting again, but you're starting again in the desert, which means there's not only a lack of structure, but there's it's unsafe, and you're on your own. Although in this particular case we're talking about a large group of people, but in the Bible quite often these stories, they're told whereby the aspirant should decode the story in order to learn something about the spiritual path personally and internally. Which brings me to another great book, which is The Mark by Maurice Nicole. It kind of makes you wish you'd read more than you have over the years, but we can only read so many books. I think I've been lucky though. This book does definitely apply. It's a way of interpreting the stories in the New Testament, actually. But moving back to the Old Testament. So this tyranny, this structure, the way things are. If we look at that from the point of view of civilization, and we leave that behind and we enter the desert, we can also bring in the excellent book by Frank Herbert, Dune. Just letting that sink in. I'm assuming that you've read that book. If you haven't, you should be ashamed of yourself. Because Dune is, it's like Lord of the Rings, isn't it? It's like, where do you begin? The weirding way, the power of the voice. This group of warriors in the desert that have escaped tyranny undercover. They are so powerful because they have gone up against the elements. And the tyranny, if you like, the Harkonnens, have no idea just how powerful they are. Because they haven't got fat. They are streamlined. They've been streamlined by the wilderness, the wildness of the desert. So let's bring that in as well. And actually, no, I'll come to that closer to the end. So let's look at the lyrics of this song and try and decode this. And yeah. So if I just get kind of personal for a moment, and I just interpret this personally. So it's now the moment, which to me says like, there is only now. If you're going to do something, do it. So it's now the moment we were all waiting for. So that is the reason we're all gathered here. Kind of meaning mankind. The reason that we're looking for, right? The perennial search for meaning, truth, etc. All those years looking at the sky for a sign, as we do. And then it says, all those eyes gleaming in the night. So we imagine the consciousness of the stars, all those eyes gleaming in the night. So that could be the eyes looking up at the stars, or it could be the stars twinkling and looking back down at us to lead the way. So we could reinterpret that as all those years mankind looked to the heavens, which we did, especially when you think about the processional knowledge is mind-blowing. The stars, as we behold the stars, we make contact. And if we, now I'm definitely a guy who buys into the idea that these stars are conscious in themselves. So make of that what you will. Moving to the next line or section. Remember the gate you got in. Do not forget the place you came from. So it's like we've been enclosed in this fleshly body. We've been born into the culture, but we need to somehow access the origin. The origin can also be accessed through the act of gazing at the stars, because the stars are our origin. Next paragraph. Soul's migration. That's very Egyptian, isn't it? The migration of the soul to the stars, to the land of milk and honey, etc. We get back to the biblical thing. Trust your visions. Trust your visions. Something that we all have to do, but we need to be discriminating in our trust of our visions, because there are visions and there are visions. So getting to the point, Exodus, we exit the world. We enter the desert. So how does this affect me personally? What am I trying to say by all this? Exit the world, exit civilization. When we leave the structure behind, we enter the place of training. So we could cross out the desert and we could write, for me, the woods, or the countryside, or the fields, the woods specifically. Enter the woods. So now we're getting away from that Middle Eastern kind of, because it's always the desert, isn't it? It's always the desert. We leave the tyrannical structure behind, and in order to find spiritual truth and to find out who we are and to test ourselves and to go through this balancing process in the elements, experiencing the elements externally and internally. So it's quite often portrayed as the desert, but in the case of the Yamabushi, it's the woodlands, and in case of myself, it's also the woods, the countryside. There's no point in me getting into exactly why this happened. My channel has got a lot of videos, it's there. Don't look back to your burning house. What does that mean? I've made a video before which explains that the occult anatomy of residence. The house is a symbol for the complete personage. If the house is burning, it means, say for instance, if you dream of a burning house, it shows that your entire life is in crisis and under attack. Your solid, you might say brick built, psychic map with all its different rooms and places to inhabit and extensions that were built over the years. Quite often in these dreams we encounter a new part of the inner house. This is expressed for me. I don't want to repeat the same video again, but you can find it. It's called The Occult Anatomy of Residence. Don't look back to your burning house. We have to look forward. Don't need it anymore because we are becoming something new. Because we're going home. Again, let's bring it or make a link between that and the sky. And then we bring in Mercury. The Hermetic Path, right? The discipline of the mind. Mercury flows around the desert sands. Mercury, or Odin, or the Dagda, or in my case, Broderick Wallace, flows around the woods as astral blood runs into God's veins. This is a little bit more mysterious. It might just be the fancy of the poet Vorfalak, now known as Vorf, who wrote these lyrics. But it's nice to have the astral brought in because we've covered so much ground. It does bring to mind that aspect of the training. And the blood, yes, the astral and the blood are very linked through the. If you were to read the theory section in Initiation into Hermetics, God's veins. Well, if God has veins, God has an entire body, and we are the microcosm. Our house is a microcosm of the house of God, which is the all in the Hermetic sense. As we begin to understand that consciousness, or as my teacher said, which is a very amazing thing to say, which I've always remembered, it's consciousness, or at least we perceive it as consciousness. This is the ground of all being. This is this is the realization that the training deepens. So anyway, take care of yourselves. This was very self-indulgent, but I think I got a lot out of that song, and I think that just looking over the lyrics of that song, I'm able to communicate communicate so much to the listener. So thank you. Take care.